Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. This is going to be the 2023 Avatar Year in Review. This will be the second of three big end of year videos that I do here on the channel. You'll have already seen my top 5 story moments video from 2023 for Avatar. This is the year in review. And then before the end of the year, I will put out my 2024 Avatar Year Preview video. But just before we start the year in review, I do want to mention that I do have YouTube channel membership enabled on the channel. It is a great way to help support the channel, and it really does help. So there's two tiers, the Light Spirit tier and then the higher Avatar tier. At both tiers, you get access to the loyalty badges in the comments and live chat, as well as some custom emojis. But at the higher tier, you do get access to some exclusive videos. I usually put out one of these a month. These are videos that I wouldn't usually put up on the channel. There's a lot of video game stuff there. I might occasionally review like a movie or show that maybe I wouldn't just randomly put up on the channel. And there's other stuff there like kind of toy reviews, TCG kind of content as well. There's quite a backlog of this stuff at this point, so it's pretty interesting. But yes, channel membership is there if you want to help support the channel, but let's get into the video. So how do I judge the quality of a year in Avatar? I have 3 ways. The first one is new story content that came out in 2023. Then there's notable news that came out in 2023, and also merchandise that released in 2023. Obviously, they're not all weighted exactly the same. Story content far and away is the highest of these 3 for me. Merch really needs to be amazing to shape my view on a year. Mostly this is a bonus. The news then completely depends on if it's big news, what impact it kind of really has on the year, or how much of it is just sort of like, yeah, this will happen next year, rather than being maybe a huge thing to just have this year. But we will start here with some of the bigger things that happened in the year, and that is that we finally did get big news on Netflix live action Avatar. Now, what is interesting about this, to reflect back on this, is that we did start this year, like at the end of last year. I think everyone went in expecting that we would get season 1 of Netflix Avatar this year. We didn't do that, but we weren't too far off, as we'll get through. So to go through the kind of year of like how the news went for this, it was a pretty slow first half of the year. We didn't really see much news. This is more or less where we realized that like, oh, rumors are suggesting this is really being pushed from what was maybe kind of summer 2023 release to, yeah, this is looking like 2024. We then got initial screenshots for some of the characters, and I felt that these were met with cautious optimism by the fandom. Nothing too negative, but we definitely need to see a lot more. But positive overall. So you would say definitely a solid first look. Then we got the build up to Netflix Geeked Week, where we basically knew we were going to get a teaser trailer. They put out more screenshots, they put out a poster, and then we finally got the teaser trailer, and it really delivered. This was received exceptionally well. Very strong response to this. Lots of positivity, big numbers on the video. About 17 million at the time of recording this video. We definitely still, after the trailer, still need to see the performances from the actors and get a sense for how the writing script is and how the adaptation goes. But visually, I think a lot of people, including myself, are pretty sold on what they've done here. It seems like they have managed to kind of do the impossible, and that is, you know, do a good live action Avatar. Because look at Omashu there in the screenshot. Look how cool Appa looks. Look at how Suki looks. This all seems to be shaping up pretty well. And it is just the fact that we haven't really seen dialogue from the main cast or how the performances are that kind of gets in the way. But what we also got from the trailer was that the release date is February 22nd, 2024. So that is cool. Long wait for news, but then they announce it and it's actually not too far away. That's definitely a positive. That helps to make things much more exciting. We finally get news and it's not too far away at all. It will be a much needed big Avatar event for early 2024 when there doesn't seem to be too much else going on. And while many like myself still feel that a live action adaptation is not something that the franchise like absolutely needs, the hype behind this show is pretty huge. And if they deliver, the popularity of Avatar will be massive heading into the start of Avatar Studios' animated content. We're probably expecting the first big news about that in 2024. So hopefully, they can each sort of take advantage of each other basically here. So they definitely, in terms of the marketing, actually delivered once they got going. And now it's just, we need to see the show. We need a proper trailer and we need to see the show. So, speaking of Avatar Studios, let's get into this and what did, or rather didn't happen this year. So I'm going to split this into 3 parts because I think it's important to separate what is full-on official news about the animated projects from the rumored information about the animated projects, and then also to separate that from how Avatar Studios have overall managed the franchise outside of the animated projects. So we begin with official Avatar Studios news. Definitely a frustratingly light year in terms of this. We got that weird 10-minute video from Brian on the official Avatar YouTube channel where he just talked about stuff that felt like we already knew. It was this weird thing where it kind of was half like, here's an official announcement of Avatar Studios, but like there was so little specifics, there was no like visuals of note here. He talked a little bit about the sort of approach with the animation, but again, without seeing visuals, it doesn't really mean too much. It felt like it was something that probably should have came out in 2021 rather than 2023. Just really weird just how badly I think this missed the mark in terms of like one of the more kind of notable things that actually happened. Otherwise, we mainly have the saga of the image. You all know what the image is. So CinemaCon 2023 was in April. Very little of what's shown at this event gets put out publicly. Coverage told us that there was an image of the 2025 movie shown to the crowd. We did get a description of what the image looked like, but of course, it felt like we were not going to get to see it. This created a lot of frustration because, wait, why are people here at this event getting to see it, but fans who've been waiting all these years, we don't get to see anything? Why are you doing that? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Then the official channels decided that, hey, we'll use this to remind people about what we've already announced. So they decided that, okay, let's tell people that the release date once again is October 10th, 2025. But as you can see here, no new image, just the date and an oddly not specific post that just says the journey of the Avatar continues. So you'll note how absolutely not specific it is. Like, if you are not already familiar with Avatar Studios and what the 2025 movie is, what is this post even saying? Like, it doesn't specify it's a movie, okay, but I guess it is because it says in theaters, but what's going on here? And this is where like the fact that there's no title on this movie yet comes up. Very confusing. It felt like something where the image probably should have been posted alongside this and just wasn't for whatever reason. But then, out of nowhere, the image was actually found. And what's weird about it is that it kind of, in the technical view on the term, was not properly leaked. That usually implies that like someone almost found it illegally, or it was put up in some way where, you know, this was not meant to happen and like no one official was involved. But actually this is just like an official mistake. So a photographer at the event, who was clearly allowed to be there, just happened to post all of their stuff that they photographed at the event on Getty Images, obviously not realizing that certain things were not meant to be made public. Eventually the image was actually taken down, but by that time the entire fandom had seen the image, had saved it, and it had spread so much where I think even Paramount decided that, yeah, there's only so much we can do to attempt to stop this, and, you know, we've had it for most of the year, basically. And it's weird because the image still has not been released officially, but it has served as the most important news for Avatar Studios for the year, because it is just one image showing fans exactly what the intent of this 2025 movie is. There's a lot of complexities around trying to explain to people what Avatar Studios is doing, while there's no super heavy concrete information. This one image highlights exactly what we're trying to do here. It is the main members of Team Avatar as adults, and that's what the movie is going to be about. It's finally that adult Team Avatar movie, and this one movie explains it all in a way that would be so much else it finds it very difficult to actually, get across. So just in case you're wondering, like, what image? Why aren't you showing the image in the video? I'm just very cautious about copyright. Paramount, Avatar Studios, whatever way you want to say it, did kind of ask people to take it down more at the time. I think there's just been an acceptance that the image is just out there at the moment. So I'll just kind of point it out here, like this image here, show it off this way here. Like, I think we all know at this point, like, what the image actually looks like. I'm a little bit hesitant about just full on putting it in full on that way. And I think this way should avoid any potential issues. But like, we've all seen it earlier on in the year when it actually released. I think everyone has the image saved, but it sort of speaks to the issue that we have, that the biggest news about the big project for Avatar Studios animations, is this thing that's kind of like, will I get in trouble if I post this? Can we talk about this as much as maybe we want to? And that just takes a little bit of the hype away from it. Just that idea that not absolutely everyone has seen the image because it's not super official. And that just speaks to, like, that's how it's been with regards to how much information there's been about the animated projects, especially like official information. Beyond that, we heard about notable layoffs at Avatar Studios. The full extent of this is not hugely clear, but it seems less targeted at Avatar specifically and more with issues across the entertainment industries in general. This combined with information from late in the year suggesting that the first movie now no longer has a release date. The October 2025 date is not official anymore. It's undated. This is extremely disheartening to hear as a fan, this many years into what is meant to be the future of the franchise. It kind of feels like we're going backwards a little bit, and things just continue to get pushed further and further out, with not really a lot of positive information coming anytime soon. Other official pieces of news include that we found out that Kenneth Lin is going to be the screenplay writer on the movie. Jessica Matten will be the voice actress for Katara in the new movie. And early casting information is telling us that Aang is going to be 24 in the movie, Katara 26, Sokka 27, and then obviously, because we know the ages of a lot of the other characters, you can tell what age the other characters are going to be. So pretty much exactly the time period that we want to see. We just need more information, basically. Then we get to unofficial Avatar Studios news. So what's weird about this is that this is all from like the first half of the year. We have not had Avatar Studios rumors in a very long time. Part of that is because Avatar News officially stopped posting news as of September, so there's no recent rumors. But the stuff from earlier on in the year is that apparently the 2026 movie, the second Avatar Studios movie, is going to be Zuko focused. The other piece of news is that apparently a preschool animated series is in development. This fits in line with the idea that they're trying to do a variety of different series that fit different age kind of ranges and stuff like that. And then also, apparently, the 2027 movie, so the third movie, will be about the Earth avatar after Korra. This is meant to relate into the big information from last year, also rumored information, not confirmed, but that the first series for Avatar Studios will be about the Earth avatar after Korra, and that they're going to, I suppose, to a certain degree, maybe wrap up this new Avatar's story in a movie a few years after the launch of Avatar Studios. So it would make sense if that is the plan, but we have yet to hear anything official about the first series, really. Then we get into Avatar Studios sort of right now as the kind of franchise over-the-top management. So the positives are definitely that an effort is being made to try and announce stuff earlier and to create hype beyond just people like me finding new product listings. Communication is still not great. Both big conventions this year, SDCC and NYCC, highlighted the negatives of revealing news to a room of people with no live coverage for everyone else. If they are going to do animation reveals via panels, this needs to be so much better. A positive is definitely that the quick transition between authors on the novels was great to see. Often with the comics especially, this has been a long and delay-filled process to just switch creative teams, but they seem to be on it here with the novels, and this was a really quick transition that we got here from FCE to Randy Rebay. Comics are still very messy, as we will discuss shortly. Quite simply, the quantity is too low for how close we are to Avatar Studios properly launching. I don't really see the vision from the top with where the comics are right now. This is year 3 of trying to get back to a level with the comics that we had like 10 years ago. That's definitely part of the problem. The soundtrack announcement release and then the surprise reveal of Avatar in concert feels like something that probably wouldn't have happened without Avatar Studios existing. So high marks go to Avatar Studios for the whole everything surrounding the soundtrack, and the fact that they have put a lot of support behind the soundtrack. That's a big step forward. While the quality is not really where it should be, the fact that we actually got a video game and a mobile game this year is a step in the right direction. Hopefully the hype will lead to bigger and higher quality games going forward. So, in terms of Avatar Studios overall, I think it is fair to say that this has to go down as a disappointing year for Avatar Studios. We expected more official news than we actually got, and when most of the news that we do get is negative about layoffs and delays, and there's no particular positives, and a lot of the news that we actually do get is basically borderline leaked. They're not saying anything official. As fans, what are we meant to think about that? The publishing output, while good, does feel like there should be more of it, considering it is year 3 of Avatar Studios, and in a way the publishing is meant to bridge the gap to get us to the Avatar Studios project, but it's not up to the standard it was even just a few years ago. This feels like it should be the last year of, but it is still early. But everything I think points to the fact that this looks likely set to continue into next year with just this severe lack of information and lack of communication about anything related to Avatar Studios must improve. And then we go into some other kind of bigger kind of pieces of news from the year. So obviously the Book 1 soundtrack release plus concerts happening next year. This was huge. I mentioned it briefly in relation to a major positive for Avatar Studio, but this is huge. Like 18 years for fans waiting for this to finally happen. We get the official release of the Book 1 Water soundtrack, but now re-recorded and extended. And more than that, they did announce Avatar in concert for 2024. Both of these announcements were met with incredible responses from the fandom, and there's a lot of hype now behind a lot of this because they did pretty heavily tease the idea that we're getting the rest of the Avatar soundtrack, and that they want to see this happen for Korra as well. So potentially 6 more soundtrack releases to come after this. Big thing to finally happen. We've been waiting years for this. Then, getting into some of the video game news I briefly mentioned, Avatar Quest for Balance. So we did finally get a console/PC video game 9 years after the last one, the Legend of Korra game. Unfortunately, it did not deliver at all what people wanted. I gave it a 5.5 out of 10 in my review. I got some enjoyment out of this game. I liked the game when it was puzzle focused, and it did have some nice presentation with the CG and then comic style cutscenes. But for 2023 and for Avatar, this game was not at the level it needed to be at all. So we move straight into the better video game from the year, and that is Avatar Generations, so the mobile game. And what's so interesting about this is that it is somehow both the video game highlight and lowlight for the year. Highlight because it was the better game of the two this year and was on track to, I think, become something really, really amazing. A lowlight because it was shut down, not even a year post the official release. Now, let's get into this a little bit more. I want to spend some time on Avatar Generations in this video because I do think it was a major part of the year. I really enjoyed Avatar Generations. It wasn't perfect, but to me it showed potential and glimpses of being this amazing source for extra pieces of new content. I liked it as a game as well as its ability to deliver new art and stuff like that. I appreciated that there was a surprising depth to the battle system. Even though every character only has 2 moves and an ability, the arts, relics, and supports, and the team building options meant that you could take things in so many different directions, that the characters actually stood out as being very unique from one another, even different versions of the same character. It was really interesting to kind of mess around with. The major loss, though, with the end of this game is the loss of a source of regular new art for characters new and old. New characters like Talarik Tug and the Dojo Master, official art for previously novel-only characters like Kelsong and Janju, no game adaptation of the novels, etc. Even if you disliked the gameplay, the art interested every fan. So this is really just to highlight the major positive from this game and what we won't have anymore with the loss of this game. We don't get the next part of Rise of Kyoshi. We don't get Shadow of Kyoshi now. We don't get new characters in all of these eras. Like, look at that art for Father Glowworm, official art for Father Glowworm. We were so close to getting that, but we don't get it because of everything that happened, and that's the really unfortunate thing with what happened with the game. And as to the specifics of why this game did come to an end, my understanding of this is that this was pretty much entirely due to business mismanagement from the Embracer Group, which is the company that ultimately owns the developer for Avatar Studios. I believe specifically what happened is that the Embracer Group had some $2 billion deal that they were pretty sure was going to go through. It then fell through, so it didn't happen. And they had fully planned this into their strategy. And so when it didn't happen, they decided that they needed to go on a layoff spree across basically all of the developers that they had. And so this is why you saw a lot of layoffs for a variety of different game publishers over the course and developers over the course of the year. And specifically for the Avatar Generations development team, what we heard is that basically on the eve of the Azula update, this was right after the live stream where they properly announced all this stuff, about 70 to 80% of the development team was let go instantaneously. And then over the weeks following this, it became clear to everyone keeping track of this game that it was only a matter of time before the game ended. They'd kept enough people on board to basically, give some time for people to play the last couple of things that were complete. And then we went into the final month when we knew the game was shutting down. And of course, the game ended December 2nd. It was a pretty kind of sad state of affairs, but it highlighted that there was a big community that did really appreciate this game and that it was a massive loss. And especially just knowing that it was nothing really to do in a way with the quality of the game. It was just the Embracer Group getting in over their heads and causing issues to like everything below them. That is the kind of craziest thing of all in all of this. So from there, we'll go into the story content that came out in 2023. So I've touched on this a little bit in my top 5 story moments video, the first of the big 3 videos to end the year that I always do. But let's spend some time here to go through it also. So what came out this year? So we got the Chibi short story, the Aang's Unfreezing Day. announced in like 2021. It was meant to come out in 2021, finally got released this year. And it is an utterly forgettable story. Outside of the cool chibi art, there is nothing to this story, and it is a major disappointment. I've seen a few people post art from this, but I have not seen anyone talk about the story. It's as simple as that, not good enough in the writing department. We did get a free Comic Book Day book for 2023. Alongside Star Wars The High Republic, we did get an ATLA short story, mostly focused on Toph and a new character. It is a fun little 10-page story, but it is not notable in any real way. It's well written for what it is, but no one talked about this book. Now, there are reasons potentially for that as well, with the book not being super available because of weird licensing restrictions in certain countries, but still, even when it became more readily available, no one was talking about it, and that's part of the problem. Avatar Generations, of course, had a variety of new short story scenarios from the Aang's era as well as the Kyoshi era. So we got some cool stuff in the ATLA era, like some extra Tyro and Haru content after the adaptation stuff for Imprisoned. But also for the Kyoshi era stuff, we got more time with the Yokoya trio, Kyoshi, Rangi, and Yoon. And then in the after story, we got some cool stuff with Talarik Tug and the surviving Fifth Nation characters. And the potential for that stuff and what it could have become as we went on is going to be really missed. The bigger stuff for the year was definitely the Republic City Legends RPG settings toolkit that had a large amount of background information and lore on Republic City itself. It isn't too incredible when it comes to just pure information on the established characters. There's a few little bits and pieces on like General Iroh, a little bit on Kaya, Jinora, but in terms of the main cast, you don't really learn too much else. But if you like the idea of learning about Republic City, there's a lot in this book. The Legacy of Yang Chen, our novel from the year, the second of 2 Yang Chen novels, was great. It's 4 for 4 with the novels. It's always a good year for story content when we get a novel. And this book, as I went over in a lot of content that I did for this book in the year, is another fantastic addition to the novel lineup. And then our main comic for the year is Azula in the Spirit Temple. While it doesn't advance Azula's story all that much, it is a very strong character exploration and partial sort of like recap, bringing you up to speed on this is what we're exploring with the character. I think in general it was well received. I could tell from the numbers that my videos on this book did that there was a lot more interest in this comic compared to some of the more recent ones. So you have to put that down as being a major positive in the year. And then, you know, Quest for Balance has some very minor new content, but is just such a forgettable game. I don't think anyone even cared. The new character I have pictured on screen there is kind of cool, but she was in the game for like 2 minutes, so, you know, not too much to say there. And then beyond that, there are some extra Legends RPG stuff, some extra adventures that we got. An Urgent Request has some more Princess Zaysan information. Movers and Shakers was a cool thing to learn more about the movers industry. Some extra pirate information in the Aang era adventure for the year. The Burning Fuse is also a pretty good adventure. The equivalent of Quarrelsome, which actually came in the Republic City book, probably not the best adventure, but still some cool stuff about underground street racing, basically. And then, yeah, other books for the year. Let's get into this. So these are not necessarily new story content, but a lot of reprints and other types of books. So we finished off the omnibus editions for both Avatar and Korra. So we got Runes of the Empire to wrap up the Korra trilogies, and Imbalance to wrap up the 6 ATLA trilogies. So it means that Dark Horse are now out of reprint books to do. So unless they decide to do the Katara, Suki and Toph books in like an omnibus, they don't really have too much of an ability to do extra reprints that are not just completely making stuff up, basically. So it'll be interesting to see how they fill out their lineup going into next year and onwards. I Am Aang was actually a kind of surprise hit of a book because it's cheap, it's a short book, but it just is a recap of Aang's story with a bunch of new art from a different artist, all about Aang and what his story is. And it's been popular enough that they've already announced I Am Zuko and I Am Katara. It seems like with the same artist, so I think fun little books that do to me exactly what these extra sort of books should do. The Power of Toph is the next attempt to try and make this screen comics thing work for Avatar, which I think it's clear at this point it isn't really working, which is why there doesn't seem to be another one of these announced for next year, and they seem to have kind of moved on from this. Just because it's just screenshots from the show with the dialogue as comic speech bubbles. It's not really worth your time to check these books out for the most part. 2024 calendar from Abrams was comic themed this year. We'll talk about this more in a minute, but it was definitely an improvement over last year's calendar. And then also from Abrams, we did get the 4-book box set for both Kyoshi and Yang Chen, collecting all 4 released novels together into a box set with a poster. Ultimately, this is something for people new to getting physical copies of these books. If you already have them, this just doesn't feel like something that's worth it. There's not enough new stuff here to, I think, warrant people, grabbing this if you already have copies of the book. But let's get into the publishers in a little bit more detail. So we have Dark Horse Comics up first. And one of the big things for them was obviously that they have made this effort to actually announce stuff a little bit earlier, create some hype and excitement so that the books aren't just discovered by us finding listings, basically. So they did announce a new Avatar and a new Korra comic this year. The Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer is the Azula follow-up one-shot, and The Mystery of Penkan Island is the Mako comic that we've been waiting for quite a while. The minor negatives around these two is just that the communication, because they were announced at Comic-Con panels, was not great. We were waiting hours after the event for them to finally post about these, and it doesn't make for the most exciting thing if you can't actually attend these panels in person. They have to be better at cons about getting the information across sooner and clearer than they kind of have been. But otherwise, Bounty Hunter the Tea Brewer, it's a weird selection of characters here. It's an Iroh and June the Bounty Hunter comic, but it is shaping up to be something quite interesting because it seems like it's going to dive into the past of both characters. The Mako comic has been much anticipated, and the cover being revealed here and it having that burning picture of the Mako Bolin kind of family portrait is super interesting. I don't think we quite expected it to maybe be going into the proper, like, the brothers' backstory, maybe even the death of their parents that we kind of heard a little bit about. Will we delve into that more? It seems like they're starting off Korra one-shots with a pretty exciting book here. Then we have to talk about Beasts of the Four Nations / the 6th Deluxe Edition. And I want to do this like every year until something actually happens with this book and it actually comes out, because it's getting to be a bit of a joke at this point. So, as a reminder, Beasts of the Four Nations was revealed in May 2021, but never officially mentioned by Dark Horse. Retailers last year cancelled pre-orders, noting that this decision came from Dark Horse, and also a vague idea that the book would be offered at a later date. In 2023, nothing new came out about this book at all. It is clearly a victim, like many comic things, of the formation of Avatar Studios in 2021. The issue here is that they have to put out another deluxe book, since many, like myself, have the other 5, and there is a spine image with the box sets here for these deluxe editions. And so we are going to be forever missing a piece of this puzzle until they put out a 6th deluxe edition, which so far is Beast of the Four Nations. So what's going on here? Has this book been cancelled? Are they going to swap what book it actually is and do a different book instead. They just need to say something overall, and it's becoming, as it stretches on, it's becoming a big problem that they don't have anything to say about this. Delays. We typically associate these with Dark Horse, and yes, this was a year where they did have some delays, but it was not the worst year for comic and book delays. The issue at the moment is more that in terms of like, I don't think too many books had lots and lots of delays like it was in the past. This was more of, because they are trying to reveal the books earlier, they are kind of off with their early estimates of when the book is going to come out. So when the book finally gets an actual announcement, and the date is well past what they initially said, it feels like the book gets an immediate delay when they were just estimating the release date from before. And so this, combined with the usual logistics delays that happen where a book gets delayed by a week, 2 weeks, a month, it creates frustrations, and it makes it feel like the books are getting super heavily delayed when they were just giving a very early estimate on a release date. So for instance, the Mako comic, they said it was initially a 2023 book at Comic-Con last year, San Diego, and then it was announced at New York Comic-Con this year without a date attached. So they seem to be kind of changing things up of like, we'll just not mention a date until we can actually solidify it, because I think they know people get frustrated when there is no date, the date isn't accurate. But my guess on the Mako comic will be late, maybe as early as, like July, potentially, for this book, but we just don't know at this point. It's going to be second half of 2024 for sure, because it has to come out after The Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer, which is a June book at this point. So the Mako comic has had in the background this roughly year delay from what their estimate originally was. Then we move on to Abrams Books. So you have to say, it's been another good year for Abrams, a hassle-free release for the Legacy of Yang Chen. The 2024 calendar, which is comic-focused, while not exciting as the previous ones, was an improvement over last year's one, which, to bring that up very briefly, the 2023 calendar was basically an exact copy of the 2022 calendar with minimal changes. So at least the comic calendar, while it also didn't have anything new, it was just the covers used in kind of interesting ways, was at least different than it was before. They also made the decision to do, like Dark Horse, an earlier than usual announcement of upcoming books by announcing Book 5, The Reckoning of Roku, quite a few months ahead of when they would usually do it. And along with this, we learned about the new author for the novels, Randy Rebay. The only frustration here was that the very early delay for Book 5 being pushed into August only a few weeks after the initial reveal was a big frustration in the year. The first time a novel will not release in July. So that's pretty notable. Then we go to the final of the big three publishers, and that is Magpie Games. So they had a very busy year, because you have to remember, they were still fulfilling the Kickstarter in the early part of the year. For most places that basically weren't America, they still had to ship stuff out to like Europe and all the other regions, and that lasted for the first couple of months of the year. So they had to do that. Then they had to deal with like the retail release of the Kickstarter stuff. Then they had to announce, do pre-orders, and then the actual release for the Republic City book. And in the middle of all this, they had the starter set to talk about, as well as the release of other adventures and stuff like that. So they had a pretty packed year. The only maybe surprising thing is that we did end the year with no mention about what is next. So the expected Spirit World book, they didn't talk about it at all during the year. But, you know, they, like I said, they did have a packed year, and for the most part did it all pretty well. Especially the contrast between how smoothly the Republic City book kind of whole pre-order process went compared to the early days of the kind of Kickstarter fulfillment. It was a noticeable upgrade, definitely. So, away from the publishers and into merchandise. So straight away, if I was to include every merch release this year, we would be here all day talking about stuff that really doesn't matter. We're trying to highlight the highlights, the top stuff from the year. But I will say that, like last year, this was not a year of a lot of notable merch. A year defined by a lack of releases from the expected sources, and only a few select items that really moved the needle and got people excited. That's how I would sum up the year. So we'll start with Funko. So after lots of rumors, a new wave of Avatar: The Last Airbender pops did actually come out. Boomy and Kyoshi were the highlights as new characters. Otherwise, I felt the wave was a bit of a confusing selection that had a lot of repeat characters. And sure, some of them getting new poses was cool to see, but how few new characters there were was a bit of a surprise for me. So I think Boomy, the Kyoshi was really, really cool. I like that Azula finally got a common release here that wasn't an exclusive, and some of the other stuff was pretty nice, like the Iroh in action was a nice contrast to his more peaceful initial pop. But otherwise, I definitely would like to see more of the characters. Like, where's Roku and a lot of other characters? And then even the fact that they're doing repeats of characters in different outfits and stuff like that. Where's like Book 3 Katara and stuff like that? Where's Sokka in his armor? Why did they do face paint Sokka before that version of Sokka? There's some weird choices in here. But we will move on. So, we also had the Loyal Subjects and McFarlane Toys, who end up having the biggest surprise of the year by virtue of the fact that they didn't release anything this year. That's why it is such a surprise, is that these two had been leading the way in terms of releasing the most Avatar action figures, but both had nothing this year. They didn't even announce anything coming out anytime soon. They just seem to have both dropped Avatar. Especially notable for McFarlane, who do have the Korra license but have not used it. So there's been no Korra releases from either of these two companies. So that's very, very frustrating. We then moved to Diamond Select Toys, who also had no releases this year, but at least they finally announced the next gallery dioramas, Toph and Iroh. So very cool to see this line continuing. This has been for a while now my highlight in terms of the kind of statue diorama market, in terms of the sculpt for the price. This feels like the best in terms of, like, you get the fancy bases, but you're not paying the price of the figure having a super fancy base, and I think just these feel like some of the best value for money. With regard to the release dates, there is a chance Toph came out in certain places this year, but I think for the most part, these are both 2024 releases at this point, with us expecting more on the way. So that's DST. And we move to U2s, who have become, surprisingly, one of the more consistent companies about just actually releasing stuff and announcing stuff regularly. They released figures as well as plushes in the year, and they did Avatar and Korra stuff. So they're kind of doing what you expect. The only weakness with U2s is that they're not as available as a lot of the other companies, depending on what region you're in, and they are a little bit more expensive than some of the more available stuff also. Then, a personal highlight of the year for me in terms of merch, because I'm a big fan of Avatar, but I'm also a big fan of trading card games. So the fact that we got an Avatar trading card game set this year through Y. Schwartz from Bushiroad was incredible. I put a lot of time into covering all the news about this, and Bushiroad actually reached out and got in touch with me, and I got to do some really fun stuff surrounding the release of this, where I got to reveal some cards for the first time. I got to do an early opening, and I think it's a really cool thing to have, and it stood out as different because it's been so long since the last time Avatar had a trading card game. So getting Avatar and in an established game that actually plays very well. Y. Schwartz is actually a very fun game. The cards I felt were flavorfully designed, and there's some nice deck building opportunities from the set. It does make me hope for an Avatar trading card game with original art, because this obviously used screenshots from the show and then kind of promo images. But some of the foiling treatments on some of the more rare cards was very, very cool, and is a cool collector's thing out there to keep an eye on as the years go on. And there's obviously the possibilities for them to do other Avatar and Korra sets if they viewed this as being a success, which I think it was. We then move on to Dark Horse, who do actually make figures in addition to books, in case anyone forgot. So Dark Horse have reasonably priced figures as well as expensive limited figures. Basically mass market figures and then exclusive figures released through Dark Horse Direct. So they didn't announce any reasonably priced figures this year alongside the Katara and Zuko that actually released in the year, which was a bit frustrating. They did announce the weird Samurai Appa Ronin Momo expensive figure for like $200 alongside the Korra and the Aang that they have. But that's the confusing thing with Dark Horse here, is why was there no kind of consistency in what's happening with these lines? The fact that you went an entire year without announcing a new figure in the line alongside the Katara is very weird. Also, the fact that Korra continues to get kind of missed in so many of these lines, that she gets this cool high-end figure, but it's like $200 plus, and it's a lot more depending on if you're not in America. So the fact that there isn't a Korra available in any of the kind of more reasonably priced categories is a bit of a problem. Like, I have very little Korra merch because most of what's out there is either the initial Funko Pop wave or it's super high-end statues that cost a lot. So that needs to be worked on as we go forward for sure. And then we get to what I would consider to be probably the highlight of the year for merchandise, and that was the soundtrack vinyl. So this is definitely the collector's item of the year. The thing that I just feel, if you are a collector, you need to have this in your collection for it to be just a situation where you have the really, really obvious stuff that you should as a collector of Avatar merchandise. The soundtrack is such an important and beloved thing. You need to have the physical release, I feel. They made the decision to do a vinyl-only physical release, no CD. It seems to be a somewhat limited release, but I assume they'll have second print runs of this out there because I'm assuming they'll have this available to sell at the concerts that are happening next year. But fantastic release here to finally have the Book 1 soundtrack and for it to be available on vinyl. Then we have our first four figures, who I'll just throw in here at the end because they announced stuff. The releases are not until 2024, but it is a new company coming in to make Avatar figures. They've announced Aang and Toph so far. There is the unique gimmick that this company has where they kind of create a core figure, and then the price you pay is basically determined by how fancy of a base for the figure you choose. So they have like a basic version, they have a deluxe version, which is basically the basic version with lights, sounds, and then they have an ultimate edition, which is just a completely crazy, giant, incredibly sculpted one that costs a lot. So that variety is kind of cool. The only thing with these though is that they are coming into the game a little late, like as the fourth, fifth company to start making statues. And so I just find it very difficult to get excited about a brand new Book 1 Aang statue when there's been so many that have come out and so many companies struggle to even get through the basic 5-6 characters that people expect them to put out. But the fact that they have 2 announced already is a positive. I just want to see something a little bit more unique compared to what the other companies are putting out, and then I might actually go ahead and get something from them. In terms of other merch, we did have some other stuff that's kind of interesting to highlight. Avatar Hot Wheels, so we got a few releases for that, which is a little bit of an odd item, but kind of cool. There was the Aang figure from ABY Studios, which is a kind of cheap and I suppose somewhat readily available option that actually looks pretty good. Funko basically released the Crossroads of Destiny board game, which I have a whole video about how to play. It's actually a really, really good game. I really like this one. What's cool about this one is that it's not just a standard board game. It's the board is the booklet. The booklet that you get has the rules, but also a variety of different maps to play on. And you can play through a full like adventure where like you finish the first map, and then you just kind of reset the board, turn the page over, and you're on to the next stage. And it's got this deck building element to it where your characters get more powerful by adding more powerful cards to the deck. It's very, very cool and reasonably priced as well. And the Crystal Fuens blind box figures are definitely very cool. The only reason I don't overly highlight these is because they are quite expensive for the size of them. It's about $15 for one of these figures, and they are very nice. The quality is very, very high. It's just that's hitting a price point for blind box figures that is kind of difficult to properly get into. But I think they are some of the nicest kind of like chibi figures we've seen for Avatar. But that's that stuff out of the way, and we'll get into like the final section just before the kind of wrap up here, and that is an update on the channel. How did Airspeed Prime, the channel, do in 2023? So same as last year, really. I felt I put out some of the best stuff that I could this year, but because of minimal new releases and minimal big news topics, I felt like I rarely got a chance to do what I'm best at, the sort of analysis, in-depth discussion content, especially when it came to Avatar Studios. There was just nothing really to talk about this year apart from one or two little things. I gained about 700 subscribers this year. Cool goal here, finally hitting my big goal of 10,000 subscribers that I had had for quite a while. Just a little bit of a note on this is that this is where I would really note that the Avatar hype is not quite back to the level that it has been at somewhat recently. I gained a massive amount of subscribers in 2020 when Avatar came back to Netflix. This year didn't quite see us get to that level, but I have a feeling next year could be somewhat similar because Netflix Avatar early on in the year, we've already seen the hype just about a teaser trailer. So the actual full trailer and release of the show, plus potentially Avatar Studios actually talking, that could be really, really strong for Avatar next year. A big positive for me in the year was definitely being contacted by Avatar Generations, as well as Bushiroad, who are obviously behind Weiss Schwarz, to help highlight the releases of the game and then the TCG set. Major thing this year, just getting to see that stuff of like, hey, me covering some of this other stuff that a lot of people just show no interest in, it kind of paid off this year. It was so cool to actually get sort of early information on Avatar Generations updates, and especially the TCG set was just kind of like a dream come true situation. I also hit my other goal for 2023, which was to live stream once a month. I actually did quite a few more than just the 12 in the year. Hopefully going into 2024, Netflix Avatar and hopefully Avatar Studios news will bring the Avatar hype back in full force. And then just to kind of wrap up the kind of my channel section of the video, my 10 favorite videos that I did this year. So number 1, Avatar Weiss Schwarz exclusive card reveals. The reason it's a dream come true is because I'm an Avatar fan, but I'm a TCG fan. And when you're a fan of a TCG, you know all about sort of spoiler season for like a new set, that content creators get cards to reveal and stuff like that. And I always felt that like, oh, I'm never super into any particular card game that I'd ever be contacted to do one of these. But then an Avatar card game, that actually is the perfect thing. And so the fact that I actually got to do a exclusive card reveal was super cool, especially because this is typically a Japanese card game, but because this was an English edition set, this was like the worldwide reveal of the cards that I got to reveal. So I got to reveal some Aang and Appa cards, and that was super cool, super fitting because they're some of my favorite characters. Just a great experience there to do that video. Number 2, the Azula comic early review. Definitely, it's one of those situations when I get the early review copies, I feel a little bit of pressure doing the first kind of in-depth discussion on one of these comics, but especially with the Azula comic, I felt like this has to be a good review to kind of like show what the comic is really about, and there's going to be a lot of people and attention put on this, and I felt like I did a pretty good job, and I think a lot of people who watched my early review felt that it was very much representative of what the book was actually like in the end, and so that was kind of cool to see. Number 3, Legacy of Yang Chen novel reviews, but also the chapter analysis videos, I suppose primarily my giant content block from like the middle of the year. That's always a huge thing when a novel comes out. love doing these. 4, also Avatar Y Schwartz, but just the early opening, getting to open booster boxes, getting the playmat and opening the trial decks and stuff like that. Getting to do it early especially was very, very cool, alongside the card reveal at number 1. 5 is going to be my top 20 details in the Republic City RPG book. I love doing the big kind of like breakdowns where I spend a lot of time going through everything, but I also like highlighting the more standout moments in these more kind of fully edited videos. So that was a cool video to do this year. 6 is going to be Avatar Generations Kyoshi update videos, and that would include like the end of Avatar Generations live stream going through the Kyoshi content. Just a big highlight from the year, getting to see all those Kyoshi visuals, getting to see the story play out in the game. People were excited, I was excited, and especially if you played the game and liked the game, it was a very exciting time. 7 is going to be the Azula comic live stream. Again, a lot of hype around this, so after I did a lot of my content on the channel, just getting to, you know, discuss the book in depth with everyone, it was a really fun discussion to do on that live stream. Number 8 is going to be the Bending Power discussion video. This one sort of just came out of the blue. I had helped Antoine Bandelet with his Katara versus Amon kind of bloodbending video, and some of the sections that I did for him in that video, I used the same kind of ideas that I was talking about there and kind of really extended them out into a full-on video, and it just kind of came about pretty suddenly. I just went for it with the recording, and I think it came out as like a pretty good video. Don't get too much of an opportunity to go crazy in depth like that, so that was a fun video to do. Number 9 is the Quest for Balance review, and this one I really like because, again, it's another video that took a while to kind of put together, but also I liked the content block that I did on Quest for Balance because I put the time in, even though I knew it was a game that not a lot of people super cared about. And so I'm just happy that as an Avatar fan, I actually gave this game the kind of time of day, and I think put out a reasonable and honest review of this game that actually talks about the pros as well as the cons. Whereas I feel there was a lot of negative discussion surrounding this game, to the point where it was almost like misrepresenting some of aspects of the game, but I'm pretty happy with the review that I put out. And then number 10, the Netflix Avatar trailer live stream. So again, on a whim, I just decided I'll switch this up. I'll do my live stream before I do my video, and it was very cool. A couple of hours after the trailer launched, people were excited to talk about it. It was a very, very fun stream to see people excited about this big trailer, the first like big trailer I've had a chance to talk about in a long time. So that was very, very cool to go through. But we get to the end here. So in conclusion, for Avatar in 2023, I would say similar to last year, not bad, but not great. For me, it is now 3 out of 3 in terms of years post Avatar Studios announcement that have not really shown us big improvements. There are glimpses of the influence of Avatar Studios, like the soundtrack release and video games actually coming out, but the comics show us that there are still issues. Why is it such a problem to get the comics back on track and to a point where they've been at before? Netflix Avatar hype and hopefully Avatar Studios news next year should take things to the next level, but it really will be properly needed next year in what will be year 4 of Avatar Studios. Quite simply, Avatar Studios just have to communicate next year. If they don't, I'm going to be pretty worried if we get to this time next year and I'm talking about 2024 and we're talking about they still didn't say too much and we still don't know anything about Avatar Studios. That's getting to the point where it's a bit of a major problem overall. But it's just one of those things, to sum it all up, of like, look, we got a novel, we got a good comic this year, a couple of extra things that are kind of cool, like the soundtrack release and little bits and pieces of merch, the RPG stuff. It's cool, but is it Avatar firing on all cylinders? I don't really think so. I think things could be better than they are now, and I think we all know they can be better than this. So there is that hope that we eventually see Avatar going all out in the coming years. That's the big takeaway from this year, and probably the last couple of years as well. Avatar Studios need to show what they're about sooner rather than later. So that's my general take on the year for Avatar in 2023. And finally, a big thank you to my Avatar tier channel members, Austin Hirth, KD Love, Persian Lagoon, Callum Fishik, Brit in Toyland, Martine Monterosa, and Cash D's. Thank you for your support, and again, anyone else who joins as a YouTube channel member, it will really help to support the channel. Otherwise, that has been the end of the Avatar 2023 year in review. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the year. What were your highlights, lowlights potentially? How was 2023 for you in terms of everything Avatar? But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.